Imagine this. Your brother, the person closest to you, the one you trusted since childhood, has waged his own personal war against you. He slowly tore your life apart, watching as your dream turned to dust. And then, at a family dinner, I made my move. Well, Zach, now you'll know what it's like to lose everything. Here's the deal. My name is Lenny, I'm 25, and as they say, life seemed to be looking up. After years of endless attempts, failures, and I admit, a few nights spent at my laptop with bloodshot eyes and caffeine instead of blood, I finally broke into journalism. Yeah, my name had already appeared on the pages of a reputable newspaper. And to be honest, I didn't plan on stopping there. I needed a big story, an article that would show that I wasn't just another talentless rookie, but a true professional. But then my older brother, Zach, oh, this character always loved to help me develop a thick skin, as he called it. His little jokes and jabs like, hang in there, kiddo, or maybe you'd be better off in marketing, had become routine. But honestly, when he started crossing into my career territory, the jokes stopped being funny. At first, I thought he was just messing around again, but this time, things went way further. It all started on the very day I received an email from my editor. I opened it, even holding my breath, already picturing my story being published with my name on it. But what I found in the email was, to put it mildly, far from my dreams. The editor called me into the office, and his face said it all. Lenny, you're the disappointment of the year. I came in, sat down across from him, and he got straight to the point. Someone filed a complaint about your article. Plagiarism. What the hell was going on? I sat there trying to process what I'd just heard. Some kind of plagiarism complaint, about my first big article no less. And it didn't matter that it was entirely my work. He informed me that someone else had supposedly published almost the exact same text on some blog, the day before mine. At first I thought, maybe it's just a coincidence. But then, after finding this proof blog and seeing my text, almost word for word, I started feeling that someone was really out to set me up. Yeah, maybe you'll say, that's paranoia, Lenny. But I knew that every line, every phrase was my own work. And here it was, mirrored back to me in some kind of twisted reflection. And that's when the nightmare began. My mind was racing through possible scenarios. Maybe someone from the office? Maybe it was someone I'd crossed paths with before? But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a coincidence. This whole scheme was orchestrated for a reason. A couple of weeks went by, and I still couldn't get my peace of mind back. Every time I sat down to write something new, it felt like someone invisible was breathing down my neck. And yeah, I'll be honest, my fingers started to shake a little over the keys. All these subtle signs only confirmed that someone was actually trying to sabotage my reputation. The question was, who? And most importantly, why? One evening, while scrolling through old messages in my email, I suddenly came across an anonymous one. Oh, it was something else. Short and sharp, like a knife in the back. Maybe your brother just doesn't want you to succeed. At first, I laughed it off. Come on, that's a joke, right? My older brother, Zach? The very one who'd always told me to follow my dreams. Who said he was proud of me? No way. Sure, Zach has his own sense of humor, but sabotaging my career? That's a bit much, even for him. But that thought stuck in my mind, like a splinter. And before I knew it, I started checking his social media without any hesitation. Yeah, this might sound a bit paranoid, but you know, when your career's hanging by a thread, paranoia becomes your best friend. It took me no more than 5 minutes of investigating before I stumbled on something strange. A blog created under some fake alias. And guess what? Who was the main topic of this blog? That's right, me. But the funniest part? It didn't look like typical hater content. No, this blog was run by a true expert in petty sabotage. The pages were dedicated to detailed reports on all my career failures, as if someone had been watching my every move. Now imagine this. You're sitting in front of a screen, and staring back at you is your own career, with all its mistakes and failures, detailed as if it's a comic for anonymous pranksters. My hands clenched into fists, and a real rage started burning in my chest. I knew this wasn't a coincidence, and if this was really Zach's doing, Then we were about to have a conversation he wouldn't soon forget. I realized it was time to take action. All these hints, anonymous messages, and that mysterious blog, I was ready to confront Zach and drag the truth out of him. I showed up at his place, trying my best to look relaxed. Well, as relaxed as you can look when your own brother might be slowly wrecking your life. He greeted me with his signature smirk, the kind that practically says, "Hey man, I've got everything under control." "You know, Zach, I have a couple of questions for you," I started, trying to keep myself calm. "Wow, you look serious. Something up?" He squinted slightly, but kept up his act like everything was fine. As if saying, "Problems? What problems?" Classic Zach. "Tell me, have you come across any strange messages about me? Or maybe you know something about a blog that somehow knows every detail of my setbacks?" My tone was steady, but inside I was ready to explode. He laughed. Yeah, he actually laughed in my face, like I'd just told him the joke of the year. "Come on, Lenny. This is total paranoia. Dude, what the hell are you talking about?" His calmness seemed, well, a little too calm, honestly. But here's what got me. He answered way too fast. You know when someone doesn't even hesitate before brushing off accusations? It was just too suspicious. So I asked the one thing that had been bothering me. "Okay, then how do you know about my screw-ups? You seem to know every detail that only my editor and I would know." For a split second, he froze, just a flicker of shock in his eyes. It was only a second, but it was enough for me to realize I'd hit the mark. Then, as if nothing had happened, he regained his friendly smile and with a smirk said, "Lenny, you're really losing it. You probably just need to get more rest. Why are you so worried? It's not the end of the world if things don't go your way. Everyone makes mistakes." Those words triggered something dark in me. I knew he was hiding something. So I decided to put him to the test. That very evening, right in front of him, I began writing a new article, pretending to be absorbed in it. When I finished, I simply closed my laptop without sending it and watched his reaction. I didn't say a word, just waited, casually. Let him know that I'm ready for his little games. Well, I thought the test is complete, and I'm about to find out the truth. Then, literally the next day, a full-blown panic erupts in the office. There are whispers and intense discussions spreading through the building. Employees are running around, some practically shouting. I'm standing there in the middle of the chaos, completely clueless as to what's happening. Then I see the editor heading straight toward me, with a look on his face like I'd just destroyed his favorite laptop with his collection of drafts. He snaps at me. "Lenny, we've got a serious problem. Someone leaked confidential information about a closed investigation you were working on. Now we have to explain this breach, and as of now, you're the prime suspect." At that moment, I honestly felt like my world was crashing down. What? What the hell? Scenes from a thriller flashed through my mind. Betrayal, conspiracies, espionage. This didn't feel like me at all. How could I possibly have done something like this? And everyone in the office, literally every single person, was staring at me like I was the ultimate traitor. I stood there thinking, all right, if I wanted to sabotage myself and my own career, this is exactly how I'd go about it. Maximum sarcasm mode engaged. And only one person in the world could have known the details of my piece. Zach, who'd somehow overheard me talking about it one night when I'd let my guard down over dinner. Quite the accidental spy. So here I am, standing there, trying to explain myself, but not even knowing where to begin. Everyone's looking at me like I'm guilty. The editor lets out a heavy sigh and announces, "I'll conduct an investigation, and you, Lenny, would be wise to keep quiet and not make things worse." And there I am, left speechless. If this was all part of Zach's latest scheme, he sure did a thorough job of burying me in front of the whole office. I was at the edge, literally. Zach had crossed every possible line, and I needed a plan. To finally uncover what dirty tricks he was pulling behind my back, I took extreme measures. I decided to hack his computer. Let's be clear, I'm no hacker, but when you're pushed to your limit, your mind starts working differently, and the internet is full of helpful tips, like ways to bypass a password. When I finally got into his laptop, I saw exactly what I'd suspected. And then some. Oh man, this guy had a whole collection of dirty schemes. Zach had actually launched a full-on campaign to ruin my career. He'd been sending messages to my editor from a fake email address, criticizing my every move, from my writing style to allegedly stealing others' ideas. And the kicker? In these messages, he confirmed that all of this was coming from me. Yes, he literally made copies of my text, added a few phrases, and passed it off as authentic Lenny material. Do you know how filthy that makes you feel? Like someone's dragged you through the mud, and now your reputation's been made part of it. To top it all off, Zach had been gathering my drafts, copying and editing them to make them look like sloppy work. Then he'd send them to my editor, as if I'd submitted them myself. He even went so far as to insert grammar mistakes and stylistic errors to make them look completely unprofessional. Everything he did was aimed at one thing: to make the editor believe I was worthless. I felt a rage boiling up inside me. Honestly, I thought I'd had the strength to endure all this, but after seeing this evidence, I just snapped. When I got home, I found Zach comfortably lounging on the couch with a glass of wine. He didn't even look surprised when I walked in. He just sat there with that mocking grin, like he knew I'd eventually figure it all out. "Well, Lenny, finally figured it out?" he said, as if it was just a casual conversation over a family dinner. And there I stood, trembling with fury, ready to lose it, because standing before me wasn't just my brother, but someone who had reveled in my humiliation. To him, this was all a game, and he was waiting for the moment I'd finally surrender. That was it. My patience was gone. I stood in front of Zach, practically choking on rage, feeling my fists clenching involuntarily. And him? He just smirked, like this was all a funny movie, and he was the lead director. But not this time. I leaned toward him, and not holding back said, "Zach, enough. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this?" He stared at me for a good 10 seconds, then sneered, and almost casually said, "You really don't get it, do you? You took my place, Lenny. I was the one who wanted to be a journalist. I was the one who should have been writing articles, building a career. And you just took it, as if it meant nothing. You have no idea what it's like to watch someone live out your dream while you're left with nothing." At that moment, I felt truly sick. "So, you decided your version of justice was to destroy everything I've built?" I looked at him, not believing what I was hearing. But Zach didn't flinch. He wasn't ashamed at all. In fact, he seemed to enjoy my reaction. His twisted version of justice was his way of getting revenge for what he couldn't achieve. For him, every one of my failures, every disappointment, was a small victory. Zach wanted me to feel the pain he'd felt while watching me succeed. "You have no idea what it's like when all your dreams go up in smoke," he continued, not even bothering to soften his tone. "And then you, little brother, think you can just take it all and not even realize what you're doing. Well, now it's time for you to feel what that's like." And that's when I understood. Standing before me wasn't just a resentful brother, but someone who'd been harboring this resentment for years, turning it into a horrifying, twisted vengeance. My moment of truth had arrived. A family dinner. Everyone was there. My parents, a couple of uncles and aunts, even Grandma was seated with a hint of a smile anticipating the usual family stories. And here I had a unique chance to finally expose Zach for what he'd done. I took a deep breath and said, "I've got something I'd like to share, and it's about Zach." Zach's smile faded slightly. He clearly didn't expect me to turn this into a public trial. "Zach, maybe you'd like to tell everyone how you've been doing everything in your power these last few months to sabotage my career?" I asked with a sarcastic grin. He stared at me, and I saw a glimmer of fear. But Zach wouldn't be Zach if he didn't try to wriggle his way out. "Are you insane, Lenny? This is some kind of paranoid fantasy." His face remained calm, but his voice betrayed the tension. He looked at me with irritation that quickly turned to pity, in classic Zach style, as if to say, "I feel sorry for your issues." But I was done with his theatrics. I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the screenshots, messages, and records. Every piece of evidence pointed directly to his interference, from fake messages to forged documents he'd sent to the editor. Oh, the magic of digital records. You can't hide or forget them. My parents were frozen. My mom held a hand over her mouth, and my dad just sat there completely stunned. With each passing second, each screenshot, each piece of evidence, Zach lost his composure as the invincible older brother. His mask finally fell, and I saw before me not a self-assured Zach, but a pathetic man who had, in essence, tried to rob me of my dream. Zach tried to defend himself, claiming I'd made it all up, that I had an overactive imagination. But it was too late. His words caught in his throat as I showed one piece of evidence after another, and a silence fell around us that spoke louder than any words. He realized it was all over. A tense pause filled the room, and in that moment, with his secrets finally exposed for everyone to see, I knew Zach's life would never be the same. The dinner ended, and the atmosphere felt like the aftermath of a hurricane. Everything shattered. No one knew what to do next. Zach sat there with a completely lost expression, as if he wasn't the one who'd spent the last few months meticulously planning my career catastrophe. My parents didn't even want to look at him. This time, he was truly alone. And you know what? I didn't feel a single ounce of pity. Not one. A couple of days later, I gathered all the evidence and went straight to my editor's office. When I laid out the messages, screenshots, and other documentary proof of Zach's schemes, his expression shifted from irritation to utter shock. It was as if he suddenly understood everything I'd gone through because of my loving older brother. "Lenny, I don't even know what to say. You're incredibly lucky you found this evidence," he said, looking at me with a respect he'd never shown before. Oh, this was even better than I'd imagined. Gradually, my reputation started to recover, and everyone now knew who the real professional was. From that day forward, I was above suspicion, and Zach's name was permanently blacklisted. As for Zach, well, he was left with exactly what he deserved. Not only was he cut off from our family, but also from every contact he'd ever had in our field. No one wanted to deal with him anymore, not after he'd been exposed in front of his own family. My parents didn't even hint at the pride they once had in him. It seemed his star had faded, and if you ask me if I was happy, yes, because this was the end of the game, and this time, I'd won. A few months passed, and while my career was back on track, there was one thing that wasn't so easy to restore: my trust in people. That bitter taste of betrayal hasn't gone away. When your own sister turns your life into hell just to prove she's smarter than you, it's no longer just a family conflict. She was willing to do anything: steal my ideas, wreck my career, and set me up in front of the entire office. But if she thought I'd give up without a fight, then she clearly didn't know me. Just how far I'm willing to go to take back what's mine, that's a whole different story. My name is Danny. I'm 27. And finally, everything has started to come together. I'm a software engineer at a startup that seems to have struck gold. This project is my chance to break out, to prove myself, to finally show that all those sleepless nights and caffeine binges were worth it. It's pure magic, working on an idea that, if realized, could shake up the market. They've trusted me with a team, and maybe even the key to my own success. But as soon as this fairy tale began, things started going wrong just as quickly. At first I thought, well, it's a complex project, mistakes happen. But here we had a particularly tricky kind of glitch. I'd fix a bug, everything would work perfectly, and just when I'd sigh in relief, bam, a new error. And not just any error, but the kind that makes your hair stand on end. Data disappearing, the wrong algorithms running, or the whole thing crashing at the worst possible moment. Okay, I told myself. Maybe the universe is just messing with me, testing my resilience. But the farther I went, the weirder it got. It was like someone was deliberately throwing sand in the gears. I'd solve one problem, and it would pop up again in a nastier form. And this wasn't just wrecking my mood, it was hitting my reputation. In a startup, everyone is hardcore, and if someone messes up, it's recorded in the team's history forever. Then, during lunch, one of my colleagues, Mike, casually said, "Hey, Danny, I saw your sister Liz near the office the other day. She stopped by to visit?" I remember shrugging off his question, not thinking much of it. After all, Liz is my younger sister, and our office is downtown. Who knows who might be around? But then a strange feeling crept over me. Liz, my younger sister. She's 24, and honestly, if anyone can both confuse people with their quirks and impress them with their intelligence, it's her. She's always been the kind of person who evokes a strong reaction. Some people admire her, others don't know what to make of her, but she never leaves anyone indifferent. Ever heard the phrase, brilliant but eccentric? That's Liz to a T. We've always competed, especially when it came to anything that tested our intelligence. As kids, we'd argue over who could finish a harder puzzle, then over who could solve a tougher math problem. Over time, I thought I'd outgrown all that. Sure, there's still a bit of envy, but who doesn't have that? Meanwhile, my life at work was turning into chaos. I'd write code, check it, see that everything worked perfectly, like clockwork. But then I'd reach an important meeting where I'd need to present, and boom, everything fell apart. It felt like someone was deliberately setting things up, so I'd embarrass myself in front of the team. It was no longer funny. On top of that, I noticed a couple of times that someone had logged into the system under my credentials in the middle of the night when the office was empty. A chill ran down my spine. Someone was clearly watching me or trying to set me up. And then I got an anonymous message. Honestly, I opened it expecting just another piece of spam, but inside there was just one short phrase. Someone close to you clearly has too much time on their hands. At first I smirked, thinking it was some kind of joke. But the more I turned it over in my head, the worse I felt. My suspicions about Liz grew so fast that it felt like I'd start seeing her reflection in my monitors and my code. She's my sister, right? What reason could she possibly have to do something so messed up? I had to find out if she actually had a motive, or if this was just my own paranoid imagination. I invited her out to dinner, playing the part of a nice brother, doing something thoughtful. We picked a cozy restaurant, ordered a glass of wine each, and I started talking about work, pretending to be excited as I shared confidential ideas about the project. I made it sound like it was so important that we'd be launching a new phase tomorrow, and that it would transform the startup into an ultra-successful company. Liz listened attentively, nodding, adding her comments, and for a second, I even thought I might be wrong. She seemed genuinely interested. Then, 2 days later, at our next team meeting, they showed us updates from our competitors. And guess what? They presented the exact same ideas I'd shared with Liz as our plans. Word for word. I sat there feeling like the world was spinning into some kind of twisted kaleidoscope. Well, there's the truth, loud and clear. She'd sold my ideas, as casually as if it was just some story over tea. Instantly, questions filled my mind, and the biggest one was, why? The storm clouds were gathering, and not just anywhere, right there in the meeting room. I was called in by management, and they looked at me as if I'd just sold all our ideas to the competition for a few bucks and a glass of lemonade. The manager, calm but with narrowed eyes, asked, "Danny, care to explain why our ideas are showing up with the competitors before we even launch them?" I felt a surge of anger. Me, a traitor. That's new. Of course, I denied everything as best I could, but I could feel the ground slipping from under me. If I didn't find proof that pointed to the real culprit, and I was now more than certain it was Liz, I'd be done for. The project, my reputation, my career, it would all go down the drain. The plan came together fast. That evening I went to Liz's place under the pretense of a family dinner, and as soon as she stepped out of the room for a minute, I dashed over to her laptop. I know, it's a low move, but I was out of options. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking, but I opened her files. And then, I found it. Fragments of my presentations, copies of diagrams, even access credentials to our internal servers. It was like a fog lifted. She hadn't just undermined my ideas. She'd been burning every bridge behind me. Every detail, every file showed that she had been deliberately, methodically, targeting all my accomplishments. What a twist. My own sister turned out to be the invisible enemy hunting me down for some twisted revenge. I needed to hear the truth from her. I invited Liz out for coffee, choosing a quiet spot. After all, the conversation was bound to be explosive. She showed up, acting like nothing was wrong, with that innocent smile of hers that might work on anyone else, but not on me. "Liz, we both know what's going on," I began, and a shadow crossed her face. She fiddled with her cup, looking off to the side, as if hoping this would all just blow over, but I wasn't about to let it slide. "Are you serious? You think I'm just going to sit back and stay quiet while you wreck my career?" I pulled out my phone and opened the folder with the files I'd found on her laptop. Liz's face froze for a moment, then she started laughing. And it wasn't a nervous chuckle. It was a full-blown fit of laughter. "Oh, poor Danny. Do you really think you're the only smart one in the family?" she said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "Really, Danny? You have no idea how sick I am of you, always getting everything while I get nothing. That position was rightfully mine, and you don't even realize it. I wanted everyone to see that I'm capable of more. I just needed a chance, and you took it from me." Just like that, right to my face, she admitted that this was all about her twisted sense of justice. She sat there, eyes alight, as if her dream wasn't to build her own career, but to tear mine down. Well, that conversation with Liz only fueled her fire. She sat across from me, and I could tell from her expression, she didn't even feel ashamed about getting caught. No, she was actually enjoying the moment, as if it were some kind of show, and she was the star. "Do you seriously think I'm going to stop just because of these so-called proofs?" she said, her voice so cold it sent a chill down my spine. "Danny, you can say whatever you want, but you've got nothing. No one's going to believe that I'm behind your failures. You're doing a fine job of that all on your own." She even smirked. That's when I realized I had no other choice. The only way to expose her was to catch her in the act, right in front of everyone. Liz clearly thought I wouldn't do anything, that her throne was untouchable. Well, we'd see about that. I decided to set it up so that she would reveal herself next time, right in front of our colleagues, the moment she made her next move. Everything was set. I set up surveillance on the server and prepared for what would be the decisive night. I was literally sleepless, glued to the monitor, and there she was. Right on schedule, Liz logged into the system again, as if she was certain she'd get away with it. I sat there, watching as she casually accessed my files, copied the schematics she needed, and deleted others, acting as if she were in her own personal online store. Not only did I record her every move, but I captured the entire process on video, every click, every mouse movement. It was like a documentary on how one family member methodically sets up another. The next day, I walked into the office, my head buzzing, but my heart racing like never before. Once everyone had gathered, management called Liz and me into an emergency meeting. I silently took out my phone and played the video on the big screen. The room went still. Each of my colleagues, who had only recently been eyeing me with suspicion, now sat there, mouths open. It was like a scene from a crime thriller. The manager, watching the screen, turned bright red. And Liz, she let out a nervous chuckle at first, like she was hoping it was all some kind of joke, then tried to explain herself. "This isn't what it looks like," she started. But honestly, it was almost funny. The team was in total shock. Management was furious. Her excuses fell flat, missing the mark entirely. She knew she was cornered, but kept trying to explain herself. Only it was too late. Everything was out in the open, and the game was over for her. It was over, but I can't really say I felt like a winner. Liz, the person who had once been my best friend and closest family, was now left entirely on her own. She was completely cut off from family, colleagues, even friends, who didn't want to support the genius of sabotage. Nobody wanted her around anymore, not at work, not at family dinners, and honestly, neither did I. My parents, they were there in that meeting, and let's just say they looked as if they were watching a nightmare unfold. My mom nearly broke down in tears, and my dad looked at her with disappointment that I'm sure would haunt her for a long time. As for me, I was left to pick up the pieces of my reputation, proving to everyone that I wasn't the type to leak ideas to competitors. Rebuilding my standing wasn't exactly a pleasant process. And you know what was left after all of it? Emptiness. My relationship with Liz is broken, and not just for me. I really doubt I'll ever be able to trust anyone completely again. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a war, with every blow landing right on target.